It's been exactly 17 years since I saw that episode, but yet it's still in my mind. Even after all these years, it still won't go away. Let me explain. As you may or should know, there was once a popular TV show on Cartoon Network known as Ed, Ed and Eddy, with its first episode premiering January 4th, 1999, and its last episode premiering on June 29th, 2008. It even had its own TV movie. However, between October 7th, 2003 and October 21st, 2003, episode 34 was accidentally released 1 week before it was scheduled to. It was also known to some around the office the primary writer had been sick with the flu, and instead of going on with making episode 34, the show was supposed to replay episode 1 at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. But people reported a very disturbing new episode premiering on Cartoon Network. Some children were unfortunate enough to see it. From eyewitnesses, the quality of the episode was mediocre when held to the regular standards. Animation was choppy, sound was constricted and very muffled. Reports of a line running up and down similar to a crappy VHS tape were received, which by now I'm pretty sure some people don't even know what VHS is, but that's not the point. Scenery was described as overwhelmingly dark and depressing without changing props and other background objects. Stormy looking, if you will. Characters also behaved oddly. Instead of the normal goofy hijinks inspired personalities, viewers complained that they seemed extremely agitated, gratuitously hateful towards each other, and constantly about to begin to sob after the lines. The protagonist also had a very bad lisp. No one knew why, but he spoke with a very sexual tone, and that further bothered the viewers. I was one of those viewers that saw the episode. Let me tell you how it all happened. The episode began with Eddy walking down the street with Ed. I noticed that WD was missing. There was an angular shot coming from in front of the two to show them walking towards the viewers. Eddy, was wearing the angry look he does when something goes wrong, but his eyes were red around his irises. Ed absolutely looked forlorn and practically dragged behind Eddy, tears in his eyes, which were both lazy and looking in opposite outwards directions. Kevin, the series antagonist, was riding his bike opposites of the Eds, towards them. The shot became blurry, and low moans were heard coming from Eddy before Kevin hit him, which never happened because the screen went black. The screen then snapped back, and Kevin was again heading towards Eddy. The view was so blurry this time, all I saw was a green blob heading towards a yellow one. Again, the low moans, only this time it sounded like the microphone was broken, and static came greatly outshadowing the moans. A claymation sequence of Double D sleeping in Eddy's bed came up. Honestly, it may have just been the abruptness, but I jumped and shivered. Waking up and getting out of bed, he moved oddly around the circular room, the fast pitter-patter of the footsteps being the only audio. The step sounds were very clear as I was shown a bird's eye view of him scampering around the room. There were no visible doors. Double D began screeching, sounded like a fisher cat, as he moved wildly around the cell of the room faster and faster until the screen began to blur again. The purple room color swallowing a now orange blur. An extreme close-up of Eddy's door sat in absolute silence for a maddeningly long time. At least 2 minutes of dead silence and a door. Next we see Jimmy and Sarah at a doctor of some sort, probably oral. Jimmy, obstructed in view by a hanging lamp, is crying loudly with Sarah trying to comfort him in an unusually warm fashion. "It hurts, Sarah! It hurts!" Suddenly, the door of the room slammed open by a new character, a dentist. His face wasn't shown because he was tall enough to be out of the shot. Sarah was escorted out of the room. Jimmy was shown. His headgear was mangled. The front bent upwards, stretching his lip very high, tearing proportions. The front of his gums was trickling blood, and teeth were missing. The disturbing part was he had lost both his arms and legs beforehand apparently, and sat a paraplegic. I almost cried as I came to the conclusion the others had beat him up and bent his headgear. The camera stayed on his mangled face for a few seconds, still as a picture, silent as ever. Commercials came on. We were instantly assaulted with a very hairy Rolf in his dark shed, fisting a cow repeatedly. The visual loop gets blurrier as the scene pans out. Naz is reading a magazine on her couch. The quality is now perfect. Eddy is now alone, without Ed. The quality declines worse than ever before, and he's still walking, the sun now lightening the mood somewhat as he smiled and began running. The door is shown again, and we see through Eddy's eyes as he reaches out to open it. His house is nice and bright, but a very badly played violin is blurring the only audio in the scene as he makes his way through the house. Eddy opens the door to his room. Johnny is shown underneath Naz's couch cushion as he crawls out on all fours in a comedic way and pops up behind her, still oblivious. I laughed because someone forgot to draw his eyes, and I thought of a mole. Suddenly, I stopped laughing as he started swallowing her head. Still in a cartoonish fashion, of course, but this was different. He and she stayed like this until she started kicking and struggling. Johnny held her like this until she went limp. A zoom in on his face, revealing extremely small human eyes. Double D was laying on Eddy's floor, no longer in claymation. The camera showed Eddy's house for the remainder of the episode, for about 3 minutes. And the next program began on the spot. Even though it's been years since I saw that episode, I continued watching the show as always because it was my favorite. I never told anyone, not even my parents, because I'm sure if I told them, they'd probably tell me to stop watching it. And if I told someone else, they'd probably say it wasn't real, that whatever I saw wasn't real. It only came up when someone told me about it, that they saw the episode too.